It's no secret that the Assassin's Creed series has gone through a ton of changes over the past decade. From the bustling city streets of Italy to the icy waters of Norway, there has been no shortage of spectacular worlds that we've been thrown into. Assassin's Creed Shadows is an entry many of us original fans hoped would be coming way earlier than 2025. I mean, realistically, the setting of Feudal Japan seems like an idea that should have been made a decade ago. Yet here we are. Does it live up to the older games, or is it just another modern entry in a series that is getting farther away from its roots? Well, unfortunately, the truth is somewhere in between. The story starts out as the standard revenge story that Ubisoft has clung to over the past few years. You are first introduced to the samurai character in the story Yasuke through a lot of cutscenes in the first few hours that kind of sets the tone for what is going to happen and the general state the world is in. After a small introduction to the Yasuke, you are introduced to the assassin protagonist, Naoe. Though these two might seem different in the beginning and what they're after, soon their paths cross and their goals become intertwined. The setting is feudal Japan, a world thrown into turmoil as the various lords of the country fight for dominion over the various miles of land the game takes place in. This is naturally a world filled to the brim with deception and death, and the story really lends to the idea that you are this driving force in pushing the chess pieces around the board and kind of building a Japan that you think works in favor of the people, as opposed to the bloodthirsty leaders who rape and pillage their way through the countryside with the help of their vassals and the samurai they employ. When you get past the initial introductions of the characters in the world, you really are thrown into a playground that is mostly yours to tackle as you see fit. Much like Odyssey and more recent entries, areas are all open to you, but some are locked by level, meaning that though you may be able to explore these areas, fighting the enemies would be near instant death. It does add an interesting aspect to the game that has been in the series for a few years now, but it also brings up some of the same problems in the narrative. What I mean by this is that the only natural progression to the story is level based. Once you as the player are given your quote unquote list, the rest of the game is essentially up to you as far as how you approach it. Of course, most normal people might just see this and say, oh well, all I have to do is naturally progress through the story and the level should come, but that wasn't always the case. People have a love-hate relationship with the current trend of Assassin's Creed games and their stories, and this one is no different. Being locked from story sections because you are too low level to tackle it feels like an issue that shouldn't exist, but it certainly does in this game. This is why fans of the originals will more than likely still be thrown off by the story, as it is mostly in your hands how far you want to dig into it. I don't mind this system personally, but I can understand the feeling of hate that some have towards it. Now that we've drawn attention to the elephant in the room, we can take a moment or so to actually break into what the story is. As I said in the beginning, this is a story of revenge with your assassination character and honor on your samurai. You'll often make choices to spare some of your targets or outright murder them, and though these choices are nice to have, they feel mostly soulless besides a very few specific instances. But then again, let's be honest, most people aren't here for the story. The Assassin's Creed series has long abandoned the narrative-driven games they once were, and has really fully committed to the sandbox approach that we have seen in recent installments. Make no mistake, this is an Assassin's Creed story, but the connections to the other games and entities from the previous entries don't really start showing themselves until the last 10 or so hours of the campaign and the epilogue after. This isn't to say that the story isn't interesting, but those that are fans of the originals should realize that they aren't following a linear story anymore. This can be a positive or a negative depending on what side of the fence you're on. Personally, I enjoyed it for what it was, but don't expect anything that is going to blow your socks off from a narrative perspective. It is mostly generic and on par with what we've gotten in the past decade, as sad as it sounds. Once the story does get rolling, it can be enjoyable as you hunt down dozens of nefarious NPCs in the various gorgeous parts of the countryside. That is the one thing I want to draw attention to that I think is going to entice a lot of people in, and that is the world itself. Ubisoft has created a beautiful, vibrant, and honestly, extremely realistic world that really encourages the player to explore off the beaten path. If you have played any of the recent Assassin's Creed games, you know what I'm talking about. Tons of viewpoints, tons of towns and cities to explore, and a vast wilderness filled with all manner of things from random animals to the occasional abandoned camp filled with crafting materials and other things you might need on your journey. The one thing the game really doesn't skimp on is the world. It really is honestly the best part of besides the gameplay, and I can't praise Ubisoft enough for just creating such a vibrant piece of art, to be honest. Everything from the forest to the cities feels alive, not to mention a rotating season system that is one of the most impressive things I've seen in any game ever. It's not just some tacky add-on, but a total revamp that looks unique for every season. Winter is a blanket of white with frozen lakes and icicles forming on the buildings. Spring is a vibrant time of colors and animals being more active, and so on. You get the point, but it's still very impressive to see, and honestly further adds to the feeling that the world is actually alive. Building off the beauty of the world, I thought it would only be right to get into the gameplay loop as it is directly connected to this huge playground that Ubisoft has built for us. Just jumping right into it, the gameplay is what is going to keep you here. If you are a fan of the series and are looking for an Assassin's Creed style game in a feudal Japan setting, I feel like you are in for a treat. Many people, including myself honestly, might go as far as to say that Ghost of Tsushima already filled this niche, but that game felt unique in its gameplay loop, while Shadows feels like an Assassin's Creed game. If that's for better or for worse, I'll let you decide. Me personally, it can go either way. Now let's get this out of the way. Obviously, this isn't a Ghost of Tsushima clone, and it was fairly clearly separated itself from Ghost of Tsushima to become its own experience. Just thought I'd add that for all those that said that Ubisoft only made this game because Ghost of Tsushima was so successful. They are nothing alike. Back into the gameplay, it is very much an Assassin's Creed entry, for better or for worse. The assassin part of the gameplay loop feels very simple, yet rewarding in the same breath. As Naoe, you get everything you could ever want as a shinobi-centered character. She is nimble and deadly, able to employ a wide variety of weapons from katanas and tantos to shurikens and other tools. She of course naturally has the most important tool at her disposal in the series, the Hidden Blade, which she is able to use with deadly efficiency throughout the game. The stealthy aspect of her kit feels very natural when you're approaching castles and other places where your targets are, and it honestly feels like her playstyle was what most of the game was meant to be centered around. This brings in the secondary main character in the story, Yasuke. His kit relies on raw brutality and strength as opposed to stealth. I'm going to be honest with people, the 5 of you that watch this video, his kit is a lot of fun. I know a lot of people said that he didn't really belong in an Assassin's Creed game, mostly because he isn't an assassin and other reasons that kind of show what kind of people they are, but his kit is a nice change of pace from the slow, methodical gameplay of Naoe. The weapons he has at his disposal are also some of the most interesting in the series, whereas our assassin has access to the more silent aspects of warfare from this time period. Yusuke has access to rifles, long katanas, and other weapons that feel honestly really brutal as opposed to what people might expect from a game in this series. Is his gameplay loop perfect? Absolutely not. As you can clearly tell in some of the castles you have to clear, which are essentially the strongholds where you can get legendary weapons and armor by killing a certain number of mini-bosses. It's very obvious that the layout is not good for gameplay that isn't stealthy in some of these places, while others feel better for his gameplay as opposed to the assassins. Was this on purpose? Maybe, but I can't really say I'm sure. Yusuke feels like a good change of pace, while Naoe feels like she is supposed to be the main character you play, and whose kit fits into every situation. I will say there's a fun way to run Yasuke in a stealthy way, but it honestly feels more like a meme build than something you would continuously use. Again, I don't really understand the hate for he gets, but the internet is going to be difficult as it always has been. He's got a fun kit, and I think he balances the assassin trope well as a parallel character. Besides talking about the 2 separate playstyles, there really isn't much to say in regards to them. One is an assassin and one is a samurai, and honestly they both serve their purpose in the story and have their own motivations. I mean, that's all we as a consumer really needs to know. You have a choice for the most part. Some portions you're forced to go the samurai, but for 80% of the game, really more if you want, you are on the assassin character. The rest of the gameplay can be summed up pretty much how the past few entries have functioned. Instead of being told specific places where these targets are, you are given a general area to explore where they are rumored to be. Early in the game, this introduces a pretty fun cat and mouse game mechanic where you are hunting these NPCs just based on the information you are given. But honestly, once you are introduced to the idea of scouts, which can be upgraded through your hideout, who serve various purposes such as smuggling resources from castles and scanning areas to find these people, it more so becomes a game of how good you are at reading clues. Once you figure out the general area your target is in, then honestly the real hunt begins, and that's when you get the more assassin-based gameplay. Where I think a lot of people find issues in the system is that it is all level based, as I said in the first part of this review. Find someone by chance and want to assassinate him? Well, you have to consider, are you the same level as him? Are you even close? If you're not, it's going to be hard, not only because they're going to one-shot you, but the dozen of guards, half a dozen guards that there are inevitably guarding them are also going to make it super hard as well. This ties into what I said earlier about how the system Ubisoft has in place now for Assassin's Creed isn't like the old way of doing things where an assassination is a guaranteed kill. There really isn't a creativity aspect of it like, oh, I know I can get this assassination if I do this. It's more so like, oh, am I on a high enough level to even assassinate this guy? The level-based system is something that people either love or hate, and that will not change for this entry. I can almost guarantee it that people are still complaining about it. And I understand, for the most part. I will say there are some good quality of life features in relation to this issue. One thing they added in this game is the guaranteed assassination option in the gameplay menu that essentially removes this level block for assassinating higher level enemies. It does remove a pretty important aspect of the game, in my opinion, because honestly, the idea of leveling up is to be able to assassinate targets feels like half the fun, but for those that don't want to waste the time grinding, it is there. I am unsure if it changes anything else besides just assassinations, so don't hold me to it in regards to normal combat. Because you're going to end up in the same situation in normal combat as you would on the level system anyways. But I guess it makes you feel more like a sneaky snake, as opposed to just someone who's fighting enemies that are on their same level. Another cool quality of life feature they added is what they call canon mode, which makes the important dialogue decisions for you. Again, not for me, but hey, it's there if you need it. Ubisoft's inclusion of these accessibility features feels like a step in the right direction, and I kind of have to give them credit for it, honestly, as much as I hate to admit. One more thing I want to discuss in regards to the gameplay loop is the idea of the hideout. I'll go out on a limb here and say that I didn't really use it too often in my entire 50-hour playthrough. The only thing I really used was the forge, but it is nice to have a hub where you can do things such as upgrade your weapons and armor, build and upgrade different buildings that give you various passive like global bonuses, and you can customize it to your heart's content with the various cosmetic items you find throughout the world. So for those of you that are into like customizing, being cosmetically and making stuff look really pretty, you'll probably feel right at home. The only thing that I have an issue with this is the fact that for some reason on PlayStation 5 at least there's a 30 FPS cap on it that makes it feel super awkward when you're teleporting to it. But it otherwise serves its purpose well enough. Now, as we get towards the end of this review, one might say that what we have on our hands here is a solid addition in the Assassin's Creed franchise and a really well-made game overall. And honestly, for the most part, I have to agree. There are a few glaring issues, though, that I think hold it back from surpassing the usual Ubisoft mold. The story is on par with the past few entries in the series, but that isn't saying much, as a lot of people have felt that the lack of a modern story takes away from what made Assassin's Creed unique in the early stages of its career. Like with everything in this review, honestly, there isn't anything that's a deal breaker, but they all add up in the end. The gameplay loop is fun, and anyone who loves the Assassin's Creed style of game will love it, but on the same note, the story will leave you wanting more, and honestly, I wish there was more to do after the epilogue that holds weight in the overall story. But that's the thing. After those credits roll, you are pretty much left with a hollow shell of side quests and exploration that feels really good sometimes, but then painfully boring at the other end of the spectrum. I really do feel conflicted at the end of my 50-hour playthrough. I mean, I love the gameplay as both the main characters and honestly enjoyed the main story for what it was, but I really wish we were just given more from an overall story perspective. Dirt is further thrown in our faces because as of today, Thursday the 3rd of April when this is being recorded, there have been hints that a DLC will be released in the near future that gives further details on what happens at the end of the story. Oh, and did I also mention that there are microtransactions in a $70 game? Listen, I am one that subscribes the idea that microtransactions are fine, but like there's no way for us to earn any of the cosmetics and stuff that's on the Ubisoft store, so it's like, how am I supposed to feel? I mean, I get it, Outlaws was a failure, but come on. Give us as gamers a little more respect. Now when we get into my actual recommendation, as painful for me to admit as it is, this game is probably a solid buy with an asterisk next to it for anyone who is fans of the Assassin's Creed games that have come out in the past decade. Now, what I mean by that is if you're a fan like me, I've been playing since the Xbox 360 days. And honestly, I mean, I enjoy the Assassin's Creed style gameplay loop, and honestly, it does it really well. What's going to disappoint most of the older fans of the series is the fact that the story is trash for the most part. It's the typical, you're just pursuing your revenge. And honestly, Yasuke's story does pick up towards the end of the game, but mostly it's just like, go kill this target, get a little bit of cutscenes, and then you push forward onto the next target. There really isn't anything that ties it all together, besides just like, and it's besides a few things, I should say, that kind of happen, but in the last 6 hours of the game. Everything before the last 6 hours, you're like, oh, I'm just hunting people. But then as we're kind of introduced to things that connect to the old games, it's all of a sudden ripped out from under us, and then there's credits. So I can't really understand why Ubisoft would do it this way. I mean, I get it, maybe because they were just acquired by Tencent, they're trying to get more people to buy the DLC. I don't support this practice, but I am not a shareholder, and therefore I guess my opinion does not matter. On a side note though, if you are a person that is a sucker for subscription services like myself, if you subscribe to the Ubisoft Play, I think it's called, whatever the Ubisoft subscription service is, you can get this game for $15. If you can take that route, I would totally recommend it, as $70 is, a decent chunk of change for a game that feels so similar to the last 3 entries. So my recommendation is, yes, I would recommend Asterix, but only if you can get it through Ubisoft. Or if you're a hardcore fan like me and you want to take the $70 pitfall, then you better dig deep into it. But as always, we are too deep in this review. I hope y'all enjoyed your time here. If you're still here, of course, I love you. Make sure to like and comment and kind of tell me what you think, because I'm really curious about the general reception of this game. And as always, I hope y'all have a good rest of your night. Smooches.